I get to him and I go, Father, I'm sorry for being late. I'm sorry for being late, but I was on the bus and there's the smoke from the bus and they burnt the bus and they got on. They had rifles and they had guns, pistols, whatever it is, and they lit petrol bombs and they did. And then suddenly there was a and the bus exploded. The big sound. He said, "That's it there, Father. That's the bus there. But don't worry, Father. I'm okay. Everything's all right." Didn't lift his face. Read his morning prayers and he went, "Detention." That's all he said. The thieving HMRC came after me and said, "You know the way we always said that you were self-employed? Yeah. Well, we've thought about it. You're not self-employed, so we want 10 years back tax and national insurance."
Okay.
And they basically, at the most vulnerable time in my life, they wrecked me financially. I think the disgrace for this present Labour government, a socialist government, why isn't it doing socialist things? Why is it attacking farmers? Why is it attacking old people? You see the way the BBC's come out of events this week that you think, who on earth would you sit and edit a programme that put two statements an hour apart and stuck them together as if they were in the one sentence?
No.
I wouldn't like to think so. I know exactly I wouldn't. The GB News audience, they adore Donald Trump. Do I adore Donald Trump? Nope.
Eamonn Holmes is on the road with his one-man show, This Is My Life. It's billed as a journey through the TV presenter's life, from his humble beginnings in Belfast to the dazzling heights of national TV. Born in North Belfast in 1959, Eamonn Holmes went on to have a dazzling career as a broadcaster, perhaps best known as one of the hosts of GMTV. He now plies his trade with GB News. And I'm very pleased to say Eamonn Holmes joins me in the studio. Eamonn, you're very welcome to the BelTel.
Delighted to be here, Ciarán. Thanks for having me.
Eamonn, as I prepared for this podcast, I got myself to thinking, I'm interviewing Eamonn Holmes tomorrow. What question are you going to ask him? And in my career as in other parts of this newspaper and other parts of the media, I know two things. Anytime there's an Eamonn Holmes story, someone always contacts us on social media or via email saying, why is there a bloody Eamonn Holmes story? You know what I mean? I don't want to read about Eamonn Holmes. And yet we just go to the next screen and we look at the statistics and we look at the number of people who have bought a subscription to read that article. People are fascinated by Eamonn. They're absolutely fascinated. I mean, how do you deal with that?
I don't know, because I think I'm the most boring person I know. There's nothing too exciting about me, but I realise that is the case, and I realise as a result there's a lot of false things printed about me because I am what you term clickbait in your business, and people want to know about your life. Ciarán, I honestly don't know why my life is of interest to people. I genuinely am not sure. You'd like to think you'd be of interest for, people want to pick your brain and people want to read your what you write and watch your interviews and things, maybe fine. But that's not. They want to know about your private life, and they want to know about, what you're doing, where you're living, where you're going, all the mundane things.
And yet you've worked in the media all your life, and you've worked as a journalist all your life. Yeah. I mean, I've worked as a journeyman journalist all my life, and yet it's kind of an all-consuming profession. It's very time-consuming. There's a lot of travel involved doing work. It takes a lot of effort and concentration, and even you people keep up with the news outside of work. Yeah. So, as you say, if you spend your life doing that kind of job, it almost seems like, how do you find the time to be interesting? So, that's something I find, because it's a very intensive job.
I agree with you totally. I think when you look at your life outside work, what is there? And sometimes, I find myself doing interviews, particularly in my early days, and thinking, how do I make myself sound interesting? What hobbies will I have? What will I talk about? And you end up, talking about things you're not necessarily into. I work, I socialise with my family, I watch TV, I go to the cinema, I watch football. And outside that, I'd be fighting it. I'd be struggling to think what else I do.
In terms of journalism, and this is, I'm asking you the questions a journalist would ask. We can train, we can study, we can read the books, we can learn how to script, we can even do courses on how to speak into a mic. But at the end of the day, the person speaking into the mic either has it or doesn't have it. You clearly have it. What is it?
Do you know what I have, Ciarán? I'm nosy. I honestly am nosy and I'm curious. And when I was 15, I became a barman. And I thought that's what I would be in life, a barman. I was quite good at it. And I always believe you got to be good at something to do it. And if you do something you're good at, you never work a day in your life type thing. And I felt good at this. And as a matter of fact, I felt so good at it. At 19, I got a job working for Ulster Television as a journalist. And I ended up presenting the Tea Time News, Good Evening Ulster. And the head barman came to me and he said to me, like, this was 7 years after I started and I was the under manager of the bar. And he said to me, Eamonn, what is this? You serve them up the news every night and then you're in here and you finish at 7 o'clock and you're in here at 7:30 and you're serving them up pints. What is this all about? And I said, Pat, his name was Pat Thompson. I said, Pat, you see, the thing is, that TV lark, there's no guarantee that's going to last. That's going to last. You have to have something up your sleeve. And I believed that thoroughly, and I believe to this day, that it could be there or it could be gone like that.
And that's why you're still working. That's why you're still hard at work. I mean, because you hear...
That's not. I'm still working because the thieving HMRC came after me and said, the way we always said that you were self-employed? Yeah. Well, we've thought about it. You're not self-employed. So we want 10 years back tax and national insurance.
Okay.
And they basically, at the most vulnerable time in my life, they wrecked me financially. Had to sell my house in Belfast. We had a place in Portugal I had to sell. I still owe them £250,000. But they went back and I appealed it twice, lost it twice. Lawyers' fees are absolutely horrendous. So that was something on top of health matters. I had this tax situation, which is not over yet. And it is thievery. When you look at, it's quite obvious I am a freelance person. I worked for Sky News, I worked for ITV, I worked for the BBC, I worked for Channel 4, Channel 5, I wrote for the Daily Express, the Daily Mirror. I couldn't be any more freelance. And yet Lorraine Kelly was deemed to be freelance because she's not really Lorraine Kelly. She's an actress who plays the part of Lorraine Kelly, she said. And once you have a defence, you have to stay that defence. I couldn't say, I would say, I'm an actor who plays the part of Eamonn Holmes, except I'm not. I'm the same off screen as I'm on screen. There's no different persona with me, and that's the way it is. So that would be a line if you could trot it out that might have saved you £250,000. Yeah,
but you couldn't.
No, not £250,000. add a million odd to that. It was so it absolutely ruined me.
Which means, unfortunately, then you're going to have to keep working despite your health difficulties.
Now, the good thing, that's the bad news. The good news is that I feel like I want to work. If it wasn't for this physical disability that I have that has me wheelchair bound, I mean, there's nothing wrong mentally. I can sit, you and I can talk now. I don't feel any pain. I'm sitting here, but I'm sitting down. The trouble is when you get up, when you have to get up, when you have to go to the loo, when you have to go to get something from the fridge, whatever it happens to be. And I tend to have help with me quite a lot of the day. I mean, as regards dressing or undressing and, doing things around your home, you have to have a carer.
It's a personal question, but is that tough or
yeah?
Okay, so the ego does feel that.
It's humiliating, and the poor people.
But it shouldn't be,
No, but the poor people who are your carers, and they've got to see sides of you and do things for you that they're just your own life to deal with and do with, and you wouldn't want to be sharing it with anybody else, but you rely so gratefully on the people who do these things for you.
We're in North Belfast here, Eamonn.
Yes.
I think that's part of the fascination that people have with you. As you say, like the barman from North Belfast, and to start work at UTV as a reporter at 19, that's a very lucky break.
Very lucky break, Mick. I was working in Dublin at the time on a very really boring job. I was working for a construction magazine, and it was really just documenting lists and things. And you had to put out, they're building a new school in Macará, and what do they want? They want 5,000 bricks. They want 2 miles of copper wire. And you had to list these things. There wasn't any journalism in it really. Mm-hmm. But then I got a phone call from my journalism course tutor at the College of Business Studies, Joan Fitzpatrick, who sadly now passed away. And Joan, she used to smoke all the time. She said, Eamonn, the way you always said you wanted to be on the telly I said, well, yes, Mrs. Fitzpatrick, I want to be a broadcast journalist. And she goes, well, Ulster Television are looking for people to be reporters. I said, what sort of reporters, Mrs. Fitzpatrick? She said, farming reporters. And I said to her, but I know nothing about farming, Mrs. Fitzpatrick. I'm Belfast born and bred. I don't know anything about the countryside or whatever. And she said, rule one of journalism, Eamonn, find out. And she put the phone down, boom. And I had to find out, and I did the audition, and I got the audition, and the rest is history. That was amazing.
I'm very interested in people's journeys, and I suppose there's an Irish thing too. People, success comes with a price.
Yes,
and sometimes people think, oh well, he's got notions about himself now, and I know it's very important for people to remain in their roots, but you how easily can you slip back into the community from whence you came in North Belfast?
For me, it's very easy. It's very, very easy. I saw a report 2 weeks ago which said which part of Northern Ireland is the most difficult area to grow up in and will give you the least life opportunities. And I went through this whole list of things, and number one on that list was North Belfast, the New Lodge Road. And I lived at number 161 New Lodge Road. And it's very humbling to actually think you're written off and no one gives you any chance of succeeding in life because of that. And do you know who my neighbour was 3 doors up? Do you ever hear of the actor Ciarán Dunbar?
Yes.
Well, Ciarán Dunbar was a neighbour, for instance, there. And that's he's a world famous actor. And he's been the president of the USA, of Russia, of all sorts of things in his movies, So that's an amazing thing. I was never aware of us being poor or having to worry about money or food or anything like that. And it's difficult to come to terms with because I hear this present government talking about, well, the great thing for us is that we've created 500 new breakfast clubs in schools and means children don't have to go to school hungry. And I would think, and I'd say, well, there were 5 boys in our house. There was my mum and dad and 5 boys. Did we go to school hungry? No, we didn't go to school hungry. Well, you would have had egg and toast every morning, or you would have had Weetabix or something like that. I was never, ever aware of going to school hungry. And you also hear about kids who go to school and they can't clean themselves, they can't use a knife and fork. And you say to yourself, where has the role of parental responsibility gone? Now, it just can't be total easy all the time that we're given everything. The great debate that I was listening to on the radio this morning was DVLA cars and, who gets them and why should they get them and all that sort of thing. And there's no doubt in my mind, you shouldn't be given a BMW or a Mercedes-Benz or so as your disabled car. You should be given an allowance from the government. It's up to you what you do with it, fair enough. But you can't make things look like that's your right, that's your entitlement, that's the state will do everything for you. But I always know that my father always ingrained into us, a fair day's pay for a fair day's work. You've got to do a hard day's work. You've got to graft. And I look at my brothers, grafters. My mother was amazing. She kept the home together. My dad was a carpet fitter, and that's what he did. And I realised my big fear in life was, well, I've got to do something because I can't do carpet fitting. All the rest of the boys could do carpet fitting, and it was too tough for me. I just really panicked with it. So I had to find something to be good at. And when I became good at broadcasting, I thought, I'm going to stick with this. I'm going to stick with this and see this through.
The mobility cars, actually, I've been working on that story in the last few days, and I just, would have to point out that, an activist was in contact with a very severely disabled person. Yeah. Now, to be honest, he would point out that, there are people for whom a disability car and this mobility is a very, very, very important thing. And I suppose the other part of the question is because clearly, I think most people would agree that the responsibility for children lies with families, but that there are always going to be families who fall below that level, I suppose. And some the government ministers, I've heard a government minister say in the last few days, well, it's not the child's fault either. But it does seem that your working class background has given you quite a conservative instinct.
No, it gives me a working class instinct, and it always has done. And you realise what you've got to do to be recognised and to make your way in the world. And I don't think that I'm very socialist of things. It's interesting to hear sometimes the public get in touch and say, it's okay with you born with a silver spoon in your mouth, and it's okay with you with that background. Where I was really, really lucky, we weren't from an academic household at all. There were no books in our house or whatever. And my elder brother, Leonard, and myself, we went to St. Malachy's College, where we passed the 11 plus. That formulated and changed my life. That guided me for the rest of my life. I was so blessed. And the difference, Leonard and I are white collar workers, and the other boys, the other three of them, are blue collar workers, and they didn't pass the 11 plus. And I'm not saying that's a good, bad thing. They do things that we all need in life, and they're all working, and they're all do very, very well. But I was very aware that, unbeknown to me, and I didn't strive for it or whatever, to have an academic background. Education is everything, and it opens a lot of doors for you, a lot of doors.
I mean, I recognise the 11 plus situation myself, and I've heard that many, many times, you know what I mean? I went to a similar school to St. Malachy's itself. And so, you know, it seems very important to you. I don't want to labour that point, but it's interesting because of the context of other questions that I have in my mind, in that, you know, you say, you know, you have a working class instinct, and, you know, you said socialist yourself. So it sounds like to me, and it's a very common view, like, you know, you do believe in graft, and you do believe you have to make your own opportunities, but you do believe in fairness as well, and in the protection of those who just
absolutely
are weaker.
I strongly believe in unions. I don't know what the Telegraph's like, but I don't know of any publications or any broadcasters who support unions. They're immediately against unions. They do a story, and the union is painted as the bad guy. I'm friends with every union member there is. And they come on the programme, they know Eamonn's going to give us a fair hearing on this. And you mean they wouldn't be striking unless there was a cause or a reason to that. So I'm very pro-unions that way. And I look at things, and I believe my father always had this saying about politicians, and he said, I'll tell you this, none of them are for the working man. And that sort of struck with me, because working, I mean graft, I mean sweat on your brow. And I always had this thing, what are you doing for the working man? Now, for instance, I think the disgrace for this present Labour government, a socialist government, why isn't it doing socialist things? Why is it attacking farmers? Why is it attacking old people? Why is it not doing things of looking after working class people? We're going to have a budget at the end of November, which will hit working class people again. And I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's fair. I think you should pay a fair amount of tax. I mean, it's a lot of nonsense. You listen to people are such idiots, you know. I told you about my tax situation, and I complained about it, and people automatically say, oh, it's all right for him. How many nurses could that have paid for? He's a tax dodger. It's not the case. There's a fairness thing, as you said there again. And I do think we should pay our taxes, and we should be paying for a lot of things. But I don't think you should be getting things for nothing. No, I don't think it's the state's responsibility to give your children Weetabix first thing in the morning. You know, I do think that's a parental thing. And, you know, you could have the debate about disabled cars and whatever. Look, I remember the time we had these little blue three-wheelers. You used to see them parked around the football grounds, like Coventry City, whatever. They were all parked around the grounds, and people came in those. But I don't see why they have to be bigger and better than everybody else's car. And it creates a lot of division and tension, so it does.
So have you found a natural home in GB News?
No. I think what GB News is good at is that it gives a voice to, as we see the way the BBC's come out of events this week, that you think, who on earth would you sit and edit a programme that put two statements an hour apart and stuck them together as if they were in the one sentence?
No.
I wouldn't like to think so. I know exactly I wouldn't. So, you know, what on earth? I don't think it's the Director General's responsibility either. I think he can't be over everything, but he's resigned as a result of it. But I think the great thing about GB News is that people have a voice. Our ratings are just growing and growing and growing, and the station is very popular. I don't do anything differently than I've ever done. I've presented breakfast television on the BBC, on Sky News, on ITV, and now GB News. I'm not a different presenter in each of those formats. I present things exactly the same, and I think you're probably quite lucky in that you can make comment on politicians and what they're doing. But what I do know is I don't vote for any of them. I don't have anybody saying you're a socialist, you're a conservative, or you're this or you're that. But I think what I like about GMTV is its freedom and the fact that you're there and you're representing. You know who you're representing.
So you do think you're representing? I mean,
Yes.
you are consciously pitching to a section of the population who aren't.
I'm not necessarily pitching to them, but you know that you are, what you say and what you do is representing them. And these people haven't got three heads or anything else. When you meet them out in the street, they're the most lovely, ordinary people who say, thank you for giving us a voice. Thank you for saying that, because there's so many people who just don't feel they have a voice.
Just before we move on, I mean, you mentioned the BBC. The BBC are in a considerable pickle now of their own making. What's wrong with the BBC?
Well, I think we have to be very careful criticising the BBC, because I think that I would be one person that would say you will miss it when it's gone. I mean, you pay, 175 quid for your licence fee or whatever, and everybody complains about that. What's the cheapest subscription you can get out of Sky? Or Apple TV or Amazon Prime or whatever it is. Are you kidding? People are complaining about paying, 175 quid, and the minimum they'll pay at Sky is something like 300 quid. And I think, what are you talking about? So I think the BBC is a great organisation. I think it's full of a lot of people who probably are far too liberal, and they get that across in everything. I mean, when you see reporters. I mean, I can report on climate change. Do I believe in climate change? Yes, I do. Do I think we should do something about global warming? Yes, I do. Absolutely. But if I was on the BBC, I would be animated and acting this and saying, giving a whole big, I don't know. You can still do it without doing it the way they do things and turning you off.
So in a sense, and I certainly don't want to turn this into a conversation on climate change, but in a sense, what you're saying there is, if I can try, because I think it is very complicated, is that, and it's not about platforming every last person who has a view on everything. We can't do that. That's obviously there's some judgment involved there. But is it that you're saying it's not even exactly what's being said, but it's the feeling that comes through. It's the body language that is somehow connecting with people and winding them up.
When I was at the BBC the day Margaret Thatcher resigned, and I worked in the newsroom, right? And they literally stood up and opened bottles of champagne and popped them. And I must admit, I looked at it and I thought, one thing I would say about Margaret Thatcher is she allowed us to buy our council house. That was the good point. The bad point was she didn't replace it. Social housing is a must, and we don't pay enough attention to it, and we should be doing far more about giving people homes, people who haven't got top-rated jobs that are paid at the highest level. They need social housing. And it is a government's responsibility to provide that social housing. But I found it rather strange to stand there as a 25-year-old or so at the time and watch them pop corks and hug each other and kiss each other that Thatcher had resigned in the newsroom.
I have to say, I mean, I remember, I'm old enough to remember Thatcher going, because, and I was at school, and I remember that the teachers turned on the TV, and I remember that there were sort of similar situation in the school that I attended, and my teacher saying, well, I don't know what you're celebrating, they're just going to replace her with someone else, and that was John Major in the end. But I have seen things in particular newsrooms where there are consensus, people assume a certain thing is
all this
true.
Nonsense that news is neutral is a nonsense. It's not neutral. Everything can have a bias and a slant to it. Of course it has.
So you think we would be all safer admitting that?
Yeah. I mean, whether it's somebody reviewing a film, they may like it, whatever it is, and you and I are looking at it, we're thinking, that's a lot of nonsense. We can't stand that film. So is that biased, what they're doing? Is their opinion on it? You're better off saying, this is my opinion.
I have to say, things you were saying about public housing, et cetera, I mean, you probably are much more complicated political animal than some people might make out on social media, because I mean, obviously public housing north and south in Ireland, it's become a very left-wing issue for some reason, but I mean, social media, what's your relationship with social media? Do you think are we over the worst of it, or is it only getting started?
No, I don't think so. You think the thing is, if you're in the public eye like me, you need social media. I mean, you know, I'm here this week talking about doing a tour around Northern Ireland, and you want people to know that you're in Balaki, you're in Limavady, you're in Armagh, you're in wherever it's going to be, Antrim, you know, and you need to get the message out there. You need to get the message out there, and that's how you get the message out there in social media for people. But social media is with us. It has eroded the impartiality of news, and you've then just got to fight fire with fire, sort of thing.
So fight fire with fire. I mean, because I mean, it's very difficult to discuss anything on social media without discussing the likes of Elon Musk, his propagation, I suppose, of Tommy Robinson, for example, really getting involved in the politics.
But as you said, I think we're better off all admitting that you have a certain slant of this. I mean, you take GB News, for instance, there will be a right-wing slant towards what they're doing. The GB News audience, they adore Donald Trump. Do I adore Donald Trump? Nope. What else do they adore? I mean, there's loads of things, but there's lots of things that I do think is fitting right, and the common things in life, that they're also against litter, and they're also against I don't know, just normal things that the rest of us would be against anyway, and those people don't have a voice. And the thing about politicians, are they all blind or deaf? You walk around and you say, why haven't you done something about that graffiti? Why haven't you done something about those potholes? Why haven't you done something about that litter that's lying around here? Why don't you do things that will raise the tone and the atmosphere of where we live and how we savour things and what we're doing? Instead, we're off always, and Northern Ireland's as bad as anywhere. You know, these what can we say? These political arguments that we get into, and they don't affect our lives on a day-to-day basis. They're big, long-term fantasies that, you know, some people have about it. I want my life run properly and my institutions run properly and things looking well and good and whatever. But one thing I know, my Belfast that I grew up in and know so well, and, you know, I would say to anybody, people say, who are you, what are you? I know that more than anything, I'm a Belfast man, born and bred. I know that. I know before I'll pledge allegiance to anything else. But it's changed. My goodness.
Well, you know, I was at a major festival a couple of weeks ago in Belfast, and people from all over Ireland were there, and they were amazed at Belfast, and not in the way that people might assume. They thought Belfast was incredibly beautiful, incredibly developed, and, you know, very modern, great hotels, great facilities. The ICC was fantastic. But we do know that other parts of the city are completely dilapidated and with serious social problems. So we have this new thing in Belfast. You can walk around parts of Belfast, around very fancy restaurants, and yet 200, 300 yards away, you're in a very, very different atmosphere.
Yeah.
It does. I mean, obviously you've seen massive changes. Massive. You must have seen positive changes as well as maybe negative changes in Belfast.
This reliance we now have on students. I mean, you know, when I look at North Belfast, Donegal Street, behind St. Patrick's Chapel, whatever, York Street, there used to be a big co-op department store, whatever, and it's just student accommodation after student accommodation after student accommodation, and you take that down to the bottom of Castle Street and King Street and whatever, and you look at all these places there are for Queen's University students and University of Ulster students and whatever. Well, I just am amazed. Is this one of our biggest earners and providers of employment in this country? I mean, is there? I don't know. I'm just my eyes are wide open at it.
I assume it is, and obviously there's a large contingent of international students. Many young people from here choose to remain here. Some go.
Well, I would say most of them don't choose to remain here. I would say we educate a populace for export, and that hurts me and that annoys me. I think we educate our people. What school did you go to? You were saying you went to...
I went to St. Coleman's College in Newry.
Right, you went to St. Coleman's, okay. And I think you look at the St. Coleman's lads there, and they would be educated to a very high standard and then exported. Boom. There wouldn't be the jobs for them around Northern Ireland. And so they don't stay, and they all go to London, they all go to Manchester, and they all go to Australia, and they go to America, and whatever.
Well, that's understandable. I mean, you went to England, so you must. I mean, there was at the simple. You get to the point
well,
where
I can't. The jobs didn't exist for me at that level. I mean, it's like saying, you're going to be a fullback playing for Cliftonville or for Manchester United. If you're given the opportunity, what do you do? What do you take? And it's as simple as that, the level and the opportunity. And I just wish there was more opportunity for us all being back home. But it's very strange you open up the doors and then everybody from all around the world comes in and fills the void. That's something which has been greatly in the news, even in the Republic of Ireland, that there are. I'll not use an adjective, but there's a lot of emigration, whether it's high or low. Yeah. I'll leave that up to other people, and yet people still leave in their droves, even in their 40s. Some people might say this is just simple economics. That that other people go where there are opportunities for them personally. Maybe that is the case, but I don't think that's an argument for reducing our standard of education. Like, I don't think that's an argument for getting rid of grammar schools, for instance. Things that we do incredibly well, and we educate a populace to be doctors and lawyers and whatever it happens to be. And I don't think we should stop that overnight and say, well, they're not staying, so therefore we shouldn't educate them to that standard. As I said to you before, I think education is a great door opener, a great pathway to other things. And I do get the sensation you've a great affinity for Belfast, for Northern Ireland, but I do get a frustration. I do feel you're a little frustrated with just the way things are, the way things should be. I get frustrated about the dominance of being orange or green. And I think, gosh, I don't even want to mention politicians, but I think some politicians here do a fine job, really, really good job. And yet I can see the frustration there is and the lack of impetus there is in Stormont at the minute, and we're heading towards an election, and you sort of think, they're not going to do things. And it's the usual rubbish that, we all get the buses sorted out, get things sorted out in the town, we can do it. Just agree on doing it. And it's not an orange or a green issue. It's an us issue. It's for all of us who live here. Tell me about the show. You're here to do a show. Yeah. There's 6 dates out and about almost everywhere. It's entitled "This Is My Life." What can people expect if they go? Well, I'm not even sure what I expect when I start out. I know kind of different openings every night, but it's called "This Is My Life" because I was named after the broadcaster Eamonn Andrews, who presented "This Is Your Life." And I always thought that program's destined for me, and it should have been destined for me. I should have presented it, but I never did get it. And so this is my life. This is what we're talking about, my life and what way it turned out. And so it starts off with, who it was named after and the influence that he had on me and what I could do. And I think the thing is, to be from New Lodge Road, and them rating New Lodge Road is, well, if you're from the New Lodge Road, you've no hope to do anything, and trying to prove people wrong on that front, and getting a chance to establish myself in England and being good enough to succeed at the highest level is a tremendous thing. And trying to tell people how I did that, and I think a lot of it's luck. I think a lot of it's luck. Growing up in the 70s and the 80s in Northern Ireland, at the height of the Troubles, and knowing what it's like to have bin lids on your road and people hammering bin lids, and seeing bombs and seeing bullets and buses on the road and things. I always remember going to school, St Malachy's College, one day, and being on the bus, and the bus was hijacked. The guy got on and said, "We are commandeering this bus for the Provisional IRA." And everybody's going, "Oh," and then nobody's really moving. Then these 2 young guys jump on, their hoods on them, and they start lighting their petrol bombs. And everybody then jumps off the bus, and they fire the bus, and the bus goes on fire. And the worst thing you could do at St Malachy's College was be late. right? Punctuality was the most important thing. And the other great thing about the schooling I got at St Malachy's College was that basically after the school bell went in the morning, they locked the gates and we were inside. And that was, I don't know what you're like at St Coleman's, but that was like an oasis for us. The bombs and the bullets and the smoke clouds were going up all around during the protests and whatever it is. And yet in there, we didn't know anything about it. We still had our sport and our lessons and everything that we were doing. And I ran down to school, totally out of breath, up the driveway, totally out of breath. And the president is standing there, Father Patrick Walsh, and he's reading his morning prayers. And I get to him and I go, Father, I'm sorry for being late. I'm sorry for being late, but I was on the bus and there's the smoke from the bus and they burnt the bus and they had rifles and they had guns, pistols, whatever it is, and they lit petrol bombs and they did. And then suddenly there was a and the bus exploded. The big sound. He said, "That's it there, Father. That's the bus there. But don't worry, Father. I'm okay. Everything's all right." He didn't lift his face. Read his morning prayers and he went, "Detention." That's all he said. Nowadays, I would have had 6 months off. I'd have had a counsellor. I'd have had, all sorts of treatment for what I went through. But we just had to get on with it. You got on with it.
I suspect people in England have always been fascinated by, such a tale and, the existence of the priest, because they love to hear a priest in a story. And as well as that, the IRA, for example, it was not an abstract concept, but someone, who you've seen on the street with a rifle, who you may suspect you know exactly who it is behind the balaclava, and the whizzing of bullets and bombs going off are a reality. I suspect they must have been always fascinated by that.
Yeah, and so when you look back, and when I look back, and I was looking back, and I got some archive pictures from the Belfast Telegraph to show troops on the street and things, and you realise, I don't know what effect it had on me. I know that we were there, the armoured cars, the tanks and guns, all that, and people in uniform, and the idea. I mean, we were aware. We passed by these soldiers, we spoke to these soldiers, some of them would give you badges, it was all there, it was real and it was serious. And what effect did it have on you? What effect does it have on you when someone kicks in your front door at 4:00 in the morning and raids your house and takes a family member out and detains them and interrogates them and whatever it is? There was hatred and there's suspicion about, and it's a tough environment to live in. I always find, the right thing to do was, right, where are you going, sir? What are you doing? Here's my driving license. Here's where I'm going. Yes, whatever. And you cooperate, and that was okay. And I know so many people who are friends, and they just didn't cooperate, and the situation, you just knew what way it was going to end.
You never felt politicised?
No. Mum and Dad were very, very good. My father wouldn't have politics talk. I knew my mother and father were both nationalists. You could tell, but the violence had no part in what they wanted and what they were about. And they were very, very straight. That just do what you do. Go out and work. Go and do. Keep a good home. Look after your family, whatever. I don't think they had any time for politics, really.
Whenever we interview someone, you always hope it goes well, even when it could be a tough interview. Is there any interview that stands out in your mind as being really tough? That you went at the end.
I interviewed an illusionist called David Blaine once, and basically he came on and he didn't speak for 8 minutes, and I had to do all this talking, and that was the longest 8 minutes of my life, really. But then I realised that was his act, because by him not talking, and then the press concentrated on me having to fill in the gaps and do all these things, and we had to keep talking because it's technical, but we had to hit an ad break because it was kids' school holidays. We had to hit cartoons at 8:30, and so there's nothing you could have put in between or done about it. So David Blaine, he oh gosh, So I think that was part of his way of getting known. But then there are people who are just rude, like Mariah Carey's a rude person, Rihanna, rude person. People who just like their position and like to be treated, above everybody else.
And if you speak to them after the interview, are they different?
No.
No. So they're,
they're rude people.
They're rude people.
Yeah.
Eamonn, the gig that you're perhaps most well known for is This Morning. Do you miss it?
No, don't miss it. I don't miss it. I still think I should be on it, yes, but you get on with life. I mean, I realised I had 17 years on This Morning, and you think, that you had a good turn where other people didn't have a good turn in that. So that's all you can really say. But I think I'm better known for GMTV than This Morning. This Morning happened at a time of day where people aren't necessarily watching television. Whereas people just time after time tell me, I went to school every morning, we'd have a bowl of cornflakes and we'd be watching you on the telly and what you were doing. And we'd see I was getting dressed when you were on the TV and whatever it is. So I think I was better known for that.
Final couple of questions. Recipe for success. Whenever I speak to anyone who's been very successful in life, as you have, we all like to know what the recipe for success is, because you can go to the airport and you see all of these books, how to be successful, and you can read them all, but and you can even do what they say, but it doesn't mean, I suppose, it's how do you measure success?
Ciarán, I honestly believe that when you're called, when someone wants you, it's like being a footballer. If you're on the pitch, you got to be able to dribble that ball, handle that ball, pass that ball, whatever, right? But to get on that pitch, an awful lot of it is luck. Does the manager like you? Has somebody been injured, which leaves a space available for you? But when you have the luck and you're on the pitch, you then have to have the skill to finish the game and to establish yourself there. So I'm a great believer in being thankful to people around you, being reliant on people around you, realizing that you can't do it all yourself. But the luck, I'm such a believer in luck, and not that I believe in it, but I know that it's played a big role in my life, and during the stage show, I'll tell people about how it was a sliding door moment. I could have gone that way or that way, but luck dictated I went that way, and that turned out to be the right way.
I think you're being very modest as well, because there's a lot of hard work involved, clearly.
But as I say, when you get the chance, when you get the opportunity, people think it's hard to get a job in TV or radio, and it is. But it's harder to stay there. It's one thing you get the job, but then holding on to the job. And if you asked me what my biggest success would be over 45 years of doing this at the level I've done it at, it's holding on to the job, holding on to jobs, being part of the fabric all that time. And, sometimes you're only as good as a boss. You don't have to be very good. You just have to have somebody in authority that likes you. And if somebody in authority likes you and they put you in a position, then that's very lucky. And if they don't like you, well, that's where you're in trouble. And surviving, reinventing. I used to do, and I used to hate this in TV, but I started as a farming reporter. I then went to be a sports reporter, then a news reporter, then a general reporter in ITV, to being an anchor for a daytime programme there, and then back to sport again at the BBC, and then being given not only breakfast news, but BBC Sport. I used to have a lot of stuff there. Then ITV came in for me and poached me to do GMTV, and then Sky came for me to do 13 years with them, and then things would just go. But I did Saturday night entertainment programs as well as news programs and sports programs and whatever. And the great secret was having that adaptability, that availability to, can you do sport? Yeah, I can do sport. Can you do live? Yeah, I can do live. A lot of people can't do live. A lot of people can't do sport. A lot of people, and that's the great thing. A lot of bosses don't like that, because they just like, what are you? Are you news? Are you sport? Are you what? Because they want to put you in a box. I never wanted to be in a box. Eamonn Andrews wasn't in a box, so. That's what I wanted to do.
I have to say, for all of those achievements, I think the biggest one for me stands out as the young man from the New Lodge Road becoming a farming reporter. It still stands out. That's impressive because I know even from a casual conversation from a lot of people don't know one end of a cow from the other.
Yeah. Neither did I. But you know what, mate? The loveliest time of my life. Really nice. Environment. I was really interested in it. It was the smell of manure to this day I find attractive. You go out, you see what people are doing, and you've had your life, which is there, but this is a whole new life and it's on your doorstep, and really, really enjoyed it.
Final question, Eamonn. You'll be pleased to hear. I suspect I know the answer to this one already. Any retirement plans?
I can't afford to retire is number one, and I really enjoy what I'm doing. I'm very blessed that GB News come and they say, look, what do you want to do? We will put you behind a desk. You don't have to move. You don't have to walk to the weather map, whatever. You can sit there and you can present this program the way you want to do it. And I'm very, very lucky that they allow me to do that, and therefore I feel blessed. I always remember if you do something you love, it was like working in the bar all those years ago. If you do something you love, you will never work a day in your life, and I've never worked a day in 45 years.
We'll leave it there. Eamonn Holmes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ciarán.